I enjoy humor, and I like to start with humor. My wife and I have 7 grandchildren. Christopher was 2 years old, and he loved dinosaurs. He had dinosaur videos, he had books on dinosaurs, and he had a wonderful vocabulary. He could speak and say the dinosaurs' names. He spoke in complete sentences. He was very advanced for his age. One day my wife decided to try to challenge Christopher. She said, "Christopher, the people who study dinosaurs are called paleontologists." Now, paleontologist is a big word. It has 6 syllables, paleontologist. Can you say paleontologist? He didn't say anything. He just sort of looked up at her in bewilderment. About 2 weeks later, his mom and mother, his mom and dad rather, took him to the physician in order to have his checkup. And the physician, speaking in 2-year-old terminology, had a chart on the wall with some dinosaurs, and the physician said, "Christopher, is that a long-necked dinosaur or a short-necked dinosaur?" And Christopher said, "That's a brontosaurus." And the physician was impressed. He said, "Wow, Christopher, you must really know a lot about dinosaurs and have studied them a great deal." Christopher said, "I don't know everything about dinosaurs. I'm not a paleontologist." And at that point, the physician almost fainted. Having fun, I think it's important. My name is Joe Robinson, and I have Parkinson's disease. You may have already noticed that by the involuntary movements that sometimes occur with Parkinson's. If you will try to allow that not to be a distraction, we have some good information for you that we're going to share today. Let me grab a bite right here, and we'll start here. First of all, when I hear someone speak, I like to know credentials. What's the educational background? What is the experience this person has had? What have they accomplished? Well, I'll share my credentials with you. For 20 years, I was the owner and founder of Bell Learning Systems, Inc. And during those 20 years, I gave 1,700 or more seminars on management, leadership, negotiation, and other topics of that nature. We had other CPAs who gave the technical seminars on tax and auditing and software and so forth. Also, I began Bell Learning Systems with just one person, me. And I was out there as a one-person unit for about 3 years. And then I decided to hire another CPA, and then we hired several, and eventually built a building and so forth. The business became very successful. I also later started another business, and it too was successful. So when you go into teaching, sometimes it sounds too theoretical. Well, I not only have the teaching with 1,700 seminars, but I have started, created, and been successful in building 2 companies starting from scratch. Okay, those are my credentials. Some years ago, my wife and I were talking about the upcoming election. And I said, "I'm sorry, but I'm not going to vote either one of these candidates for president." And my wife said, "Well, why not?" I said, "Well, they're not qualified. They do not have experience. We have John McCain, who's been a fighter pilot. He's been a hostage. He's a wonderful man, but he's also a fighter pilot. And fighter pilots tend to be lone eagles. And sometimes fighter pilots are Tom Cruise, and that's who they are. And he's had a history of not getting along with other members of the party. He's not a team player. And then we have Barack Obama, and he does not have any experience as a chief financial officer of a major corporation. So I am just not comfortable with either candidate, and I will not vote for either one. After the election was completed and Obama won the election, I was observing not only his speech, but also the minority people in the audience. Many of them had tears in their eyes. The United States had elected a minority person. I felt good about that. I was born in 1945, and I saw all of the bad things that could happen in the minority community. And to see a president, that was powerful. Now, I'm an emotional guy, and so I may share some emotion with you today. Obama made a speech after his election, and he said in this speech about stimulus for the economy that it would be a bipartisan speech. Not only would it be bipartisan, but we would also have this posted on the internet before it passes, and there certainly will be no pork barrel in this program. Unfortunately for me, Obama went back to working with the Democratic Party, and he appeared to be a Democratic senator from Illinois. Not president, but that. Well, when the stimulus bill passed, I said, now we've got an opportunity for Obama to show that he is the leader. He's the man in charge. He can veto this thing, send it back, and tell the Congress they've got to follow his instructions, and that he wants it bipartisan, and it's not bipartisan, and no pork barrel, and also to post it so that it can be read before it's passed. None of that happened. And when none of that happened, I suddenly realized that we have a serious problem with leadership. The leader is the person who sets the standards. And when you set high standards, you expect your staff to meet those standards. He did not do that. Now, I have been president of 2 different companies, and it was my job not only to set the standards, but also look to the future and see where are we going to be next year and the year after that. If I can work on that, that's my job. My staff's job is to work here and now. In other words, Bell Learning Systems was doing continuing education seminars. We had people call in and register for seminars. I made it a policy to have 4 telephone lines and at least 4 people working every day, so that no matter when someone called in, we could handle their registration. We didn't have to put them on hold. We didn't have to say, your call will be taken in the order it was received, any of that. We just, boom, we took the call and we made the reservation. And we tried to treat people as well as we could. Over a period of time, those policies paid off. I remember one late afternoon, I was in my office and telephone rang, a guy from West Palm Beach. A lot of money in West Palm Beach. And he said, I cannot go to this seminar you've got scheduled for tomorrow, and I don't know what my penalty will be, but how much will it be? And I said, well, would you like to go to another seminar? He said, yeah, I want to go to the one next week. I said, okay, I think I can schedule for the one next week. He said, okay, but what's the penalty? I said, sir, we don't charge a penalty, but we might need a note from your mom. And when I said this, the guy broke up with laughter, and he said, you know, I really needed that. And I think laughter and humor is important. And occasionally I find something I just dearly love. And if you'll excuse me for a moment, I'll share this one with you. It's about bears. And we have information here. Excuse me for reading, but I can't memorize all this much. The Alberta Department of Environmental Services, hikers, hunters, fishermen, and golfers to take extra precaution and remain vigilant because of increased bear activity in the area. Hikers should wear noise-producing devices such as little tiny bells on their clothing to alert the bears but not startle them unexpectedly. Hikers should also carry pepper spray in case of an encounter with a bear. To watch for bear signs of activity, hikers should know the difference between black bear and grizzly bear droppings. Black bear droppings are smaller, contain berries, and possibly some squirrel fur. Grizzly bear droppings have little tiny bells on them and smell like pepper spray. Okay, a touch of humor, and we need that. I grew up on a farm here in central Alabama, and my father was a tremendous man. He was a worker. 2 words he said, 2 sentences he said almost every day of his life. Son, it will be daylight soon. We can go out there and get started. And the next thing he would say later in the day, son, I believe if we work steady, we can finish before it gets dark. My father did not waste daylight. If it was daylight, we were working. And then on Saturday, I said, Dad, we should take off Saturday and we need to have some fun. He said, son, the book says 6 days shall you labor. And I never could argue with the Bible, so that's what I did. 6 days worked, 7th day I went to church. Married the preacher's daughter. Now, that was a good move because she was beautiful and intelligent and a terrific person and all those things, but she also was the only person I ever met because I was either working or going to school the whole time. All right, let's talk a little bit more about our political people here. We have Obama with a problem with the legislation we discussed earlier, and now we have an even more grave and more difficult problem. Netanyahu is the prime minister of Israel, and in Iran they're building a nuclear device, and if it gets built and they have a delivery system, the leader of Iran says that he will destroy Israel completely. And with atomic weapons, he could do that. We have had a previous president who faced a madman dictator in Saddam Hussein. And George Bush, with Tony Blair's backing and others, stopped Saddam Hussein. He destroyed their army, and then they were able to hold elections and have freedom. Interestingly enough, there are now 9 or 10 countries in the Middle East who have decided that they will no longer tolerate a dictator. And we see people dying in Syria and other countries. Libya has been freed, and Egypt and other countries. And the people are going for freedom. And I think I need to give George Bush credit because he was the one who said it first, that you can be free. And that's leadership. When Ronald Reagan was at the Brandenburg Gate in West Berlin many, many years ago, and the wall was next to him, and he said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Now that planted the seed in the minds of the people. They could now see the wall being torn down. And when they can see it, they can do it. But the leader is the person who has given them directions of where to go. And leadership is primarily direction. This is the way we're going. This is the direction we're going in. And then managers help us get there. Netanyahu served in the military. He moved up to be part of the Special Forces unit. He fought in 3 or 4 different wars. He also is well educated. He has been prime minister, and he has held several different cabinet official positions in the Israeli government. Obviously very well qualified to be prime minister. When Obama sat beside Netanyahu, Obama did not gain from that experience. He lost. And so now he has not talked with Netanyahu, and I think the reason is that there's such a great disparity between what a visionary leader would be and what a guy would be who is a senator from Illinois and is still doing exactly that. When Obama took office, I was not aware of the enormous debt that the U.S. had incurred. George Bush started with a $5 trillion debt, and after having a war in Iraq and Iran and in Afghanistan, he then ended up owing another $5 trillion at the end of his career. So we have Obama taking office with 10 trillion, I think I said billion a minute ago, but I meant trillion, $10 trillion in debt. Obviously, the most important thing for this president to do is to reduce that debt. Instead, the debt was increased by another $6 trillion, and it's increasing today. That's why I'm here. I had a friend call. He said, "Joe, you've got to do something." I said, "I can't do anything. I've got Parkinson's disease. It causes me to be weak. Sometimes I can only be coherent for 20 or 30 minutes, and then that's it." He said, "Well, you need to do it." I said, "Okay, I'll do what I can do." Now, I began to research to determine what happens to the money. And I discovered that Obama is very involved in solar power and other green power programs. $535 million was loaned to Solinda, and 6 months later they were bankrupt. 6 months later? Any good accounting firm or accounting people could have looked at the books and said, if you put $535 million in here, it's not going to last a year. Accountants know how to do finance. And there's something wrong with this. You do not give out $535 million and boom, 6 months later, it's all gone. But this administration has done more than that. They've also had an electric car called Fisker, and it was $529 million. And they guaranteed that loan, and that company left the U.S. and is in Europe somewhere. Now we've lost over $1 billion, and we're spending money that should not be spent. And we're spending it in the wrong place. Now I want to talk about how to know what you're doing when you're spending money. And let's get into that. If we're going to have a business, or if we're going to give money to an enterprise, let's know how to do that. Competitive advantage. We have the American free enterprise system, and competition is the key. So the first thing I want to know is, how do you win in the marketplace? There are 4 key areas. The first one is price. And the company that's been winning on price forever is Walmart. The largest retailer in the world, huge company. They have the lowest price. They've been winning on price. And then there's the dollar stores. They also are doing the same thing. The service. Many years ago, a young guy was in college and realized that a lot of people would like to receive packages or mail faster than they're getting them. And he decided to prepare an overnight service of delivery. And he prepared it, and it worked. Fred Smith created Federal Express, great company, great ideas, great leadership. Then there's quality. You can win on quality because you make something better than anyone else in the world. Stradivarius must have taken that to heart. But we also have Caterpillar, and Caterpillar makes heavy equipment that's very expensive to operate. And so it's made with quality, and then if you do have a problem with a part from Caterpillar, they'll have it to you the next day. And there's quantity. Sometimes you have large amounts. We faced this problem once with a convention. We found that the Opryland Hotel had thousands of rooms. They could accommodate large conventions, and they also had other hotels that would work with them in order to do that. So there is a way to analyze a company, and this is my first step. What do you do to allow yourself to win in the marketplace? When I started Bell Learning Systems, I had the lowest price of anyone out there. I had the best seminar of anyone out there because I was using video projection equipment and no one else was, and it was very helpful. We had videos from Tom Peters and other outstanding management people in the field, and the business grew and grew and grew. Excuse me. Every once in a while, Mr. Parkinson's grabs a hold of me. Our nation must reduce costs and increase income and pay down the debt. When I said the debt was $16 trillion, that might not ring a bell with you. But if I tell you that every man, woman, and child in this country owes $50,000, that ought to ring a bell. 50,000. I've got 7 grandchildren. And now every one of them have $50,000 of indebtedness because we have a president who spent $5 or $6 trillion when he should have been paying down a debt by $5 or $6 trillion. It was not known. The tax code must be improved. There are 59,000 pages of tax code. It's easy to change the tax code, and I'll tell you how to do it. Most senators say that they like a flat tax, but the problem with the flat tax is the people at the low end, those who are making, say, $20,000 or $30,000 a year, if they pay a percentage that's the same as everyone else's percentage, all their money goes for expenses for food, clothing, shelter, gasoline, transportation. They don't have any money left over. But the people who are making $1 million a year, and if it only costs them $100,000, $200,000, they got $800,000 of disposable income. So a flat tax is unfair to the low-income people. So I did not put it on the low-income people. I put a flat tax on those who make $250,000 a year and up. I also wanted to be sure that all these other people out here would pay their taxes. So we would have a 10% sales tax collected by the state, collected the same way it is today, but it would go to the federal government. Now the federal government is going to return some of that money to the state, and so they can work that out very easily. But the nice thing about a sales tax is everyone pays their taxes. Right now, if you go to the head of the Internal Revenue Service, they will tell you that 50% of the people are not paying tax. That's not right. Now, some of them should not pay tax. I'm in that category. My income is from Social Security. And if your income is from Social Security, you don't need to file and pay taxes. We can improve the tax forms. And when we make that improvement, when people know what their taxes will be, they can then decide how to run their business. Try running a business and have this huge cost over here, and you don't know what it is. How do you do that? I suffered, I know. And there were times when I had to come up with money to meet the payroll. I mortgaged everything I had. I would have mortgaged the dog, but no one would have taken it. Getting the tax code correct and make it simple. If we do that, there are over 100,000 people working at the Internal Revenue Service, and we can reduce that number by about 80%. What I would recommend is to take those people, some are going to retire, and give them early retirement, that's fine, but the others could work with the armed forces, where there are wounded people, and right now, my estimation is there are about 50,000 people who need attention. And if we could take 25,000 of those people from over here at IRS and have each one of them work with 2 people, it would be meaningful to those 2 people who needed someone to work on their behalf. Many years ago, I was in college, and I heard a story about Bear Bryant, a great football coach. He also was an outstanding manager. Coach Bryant had 2 low-paying jobs in the athletic department. he decided to combine the two jobs into one job, and it became a good paying job. And the guy he hired, I believe, was Charlie Thornton, who stayed there about 16 years and won an award as being one of the best in that particular field. We can do the same thing. We can consolidate. Now, my first consolidation that I would make, if I were elected president, which I'm not, is the cabinet posts. Right now, there are 15 cabinet posts. That's too many. I'll give you my example of what I think it should be. And I reduced the cabinet posts to 8. Because 8 people can sit at a table and get something done. If you get more than 8, it does not work. 6 is even better. All right, here we go. Secretary of Defense. I like General Petraeus in that role. Secretary of State. Here's one that will be exciting. I would like to see Donald Trump as Secretary of State. And why would that occur? Because most of what happens as Secretary of State is negotiating and give and take. And I would say that Donald Trump has done more negotiating than anyone else that we know. Secretary of Treasury, I would consider Condoleezza Rice. She's honest, very honest. She will tell the president the honest truth about what's happening. I like that. When you are president of a company, some of your employees are never going to give you bad news. But then there's some who will tell you exactly what you need to know, and that's one of the things that she does that makes her so exciting. Attorney General. We need someone here who's strong and who can work with the government to reduce all these regulations that we have that are killing business. So I need someone that's intelligent, quick decisions, and knows all of the stupid regulations and whatever. I got Newt Gingrich for that job. I think Newt could do it. At this point, we have commerce and transportation. I would have the Bush brother that was not president, although maybe he should have been. I'd put him in that job. Texas has a lot of transportation, a lot of commerce. They have pipelines, they have automobiles, and they have very good road facilities. So I think I would like to see him consider that particular job. Secretary of Human Services. I do not know who I would put in that job, but I would like to see a physician. A few years ago, we had a senator from Tennessee, wonderful man, and he was a physician. I would like to see if he would be interested in that particular job. And then the Office of Homeland Security. Now, there we are. We have 8 people. It's easier to choose 8 highly qualified people than it is to do 15. And when we've been doing 15, we have had problems. It just did not work. Let me set this down again. Tune. And I'll pick this up again. I have a quote in this book that is one of my favorites. It's from Fred Allen, and Fred Allen is almost prior to my time, but in the 1950s when it was radio, and Fred Allen was very good. He said, quote, "My wife and I were vacationing at a little seacoast town in Maine. It was so dull that one day the tide went out and never came back." Fred Allen. Sometimes we have a situation in which we introduce a topic that people feel like they know and do well. In our case, that would be negotiation. I had fun with negotiation. I taught over 200 seminars on negotiation. And I used this example. This is an orange. Now, it's not a real orange, it's a plastic orange. It's one I could carry in my briefcase and use at every seminar. I tried using real oranges at first, but late at night, those oranges tend to disappear. I would take this orange and hold it before the group. And I had 30 or 50 participants, and I would say, "I have an orange. You want the orange? I want the orange. How can you get it?" And someone would say we could ask for it. Someone else said we could buy it. Someone else said we could offer to trade. I said, "No, none of those have worked. I still have the orange. You still want it." About that time, there's usually a man who says, "We could take it from you." I said, I call that the Miami response. I said, let me explain that. I said, I was down in Miami. I had about 50 participants in the seminar. And I held the orange up, and I said, I have an orange. I want it. You want it. How could you get it? And a guy sitting on the front row, and the first response I got, he said, we could shoot you. Miami is a little tougher place than other places. You go from Miami, where somebody has poured gasoline on people and set them on fire, and then go to Greensboro, North Carolina, and the lead on the news was that there was a peeping Tom. I like the peeping Tom kind of news better than that. Well, now you've had some time to think. How would you get the orange? No one thought to ask, Joe, why do you want that orange? And the response is, I'm going to make an orange cake. And one of the ingredients in the orange cake is grated orange peel. So I use one of those old-fashioned hand graters, and I'll grate off the peel. You know why they call it a hand grater? Normally that's what you grate, your hand. Now, once I have grated away the peeling, you might ask, Joe, could I have that orange? And I would say yes, because I have what I need. I have the grated orange peel. The beauty of the illustration is very simply this. If you had just thought to ask, what are my needs? What do you want? Not only could you have received the orange just by asking for it, but I would have also peeled it for you. Now that's negotiation. Learning what you really want, learning what the other party wants, and then putting a proposal together that works. That happened in the Middle East. After Egypt and Israel had a war, there was a discussion how to stop it. And the proposal came, why don't we not let any troops be in the Gaza Strip between Egypt and Israel? Huge piece of land. And sure enough, they agreed to this. And we have not had a war in that area since. But there's no way to get a foothold by getting up on the border and then attacking. The example of the orange. I hope you have gained something from this, and I hope you will think about leadership and management, because we need someone who is a leader, a person who can visualize the future. Stephen Jobs was asked, well, Steve, why don't you do more customer surveys? And Steve said, how can someone tell you what they want when they never have even seen it? And he created new products for people. I was teaching seminars on investment. And in 2003, I said to the class that if you see one of these visionary leaders who've proven their ability, you can join with them and just buy their stock and continue to buy it as they continue to go and grow. I wish I had taken my own advice. I did not. But those that did take it have made a ton of money. Apple is doing great. Absolutely. Steve Jobs had high standards. His people knew what the standards were. They knew they had to work like the dickens to meet those standards, but they would meet them. And that's what we need today. We need a visionary leader, someone who can see what it would be like in the future. See what it would be like if Iran did not have an atomic weapon. We've got to be careful there. Our president is reluctant to use our military. The U.S. military is the strongest in the world and certainly composed of the bravest people I've ever known. And it's an all-volunteer army. And yet, it's sitting idly by. It took a huge amount of time for the Secretary of State, Mrs. Clinton, to get air power for the freedom fighters in Libya. Once they got the air power, boom, it was over. Other countries have asked for air power to give them a chance so that they could also become free. But it's not been forthcoming.